anyhow. Um, I don't think that we will be able to, even the devs, right? Even people who are writing a lot of code for this stuff will be able to fully understand the effect of the code until it's actually live on the hub with live capital. And I realize that there's risk there. In fact, my personal estimate is that if we do go forward with 2.0 and we implement per the white paper spec, there's a 10% chance that we literally just kill the hub. The reason I'm still voting yes is that my 90% is pretty rosy. So basically, like there's a 10% chance that by voting yes, I'm somewhat willfully contributing to the destruction of the Cosmos Hub, which of course I do not want to do. But everything has risks. This is a legitimate risk. And the remaining 90%, though, I see scope for exponential growth in utility of the hub. Yes, Yelena.
I'm curious, Jacob, where did you get that 10% kind of figure, and like what is the risk analysis? Because I've been thinking a lot about this as well, right? Like, what are the risks? So, like, for example, one thing that we discussed before, this was actually like even for Cosmoverse, something that at Informal Systems. So I guess, like, for context here, I'm Yelena. I represent Informal Systems. We're building the interchain security feature, and we've been working pretty hard to take it to market. So, like, that's kind of been our very big focus when it comes to Gaia development over the last several months. But one thing that we talked about in Informal was, so there is a risk, right, of like Gaia, like, deploying code, like having software, like live on the hub. Obviously, Prop 69 kind of showed that we do want like a minimalist hub from the perspective like software and where it gets deployed. So, a lot of the pieces of 2.0, like the allocator, the scheduler, things like this, we were pretty like firm, like these should live on consumer chains, right? Like, we don't want this to like live on Gaia itself. That's a big risk from from a security perspective, from even just a governance perspective. Like, think about how like much governance and upgrades would have to take place, like, for all of these things to ship effectively on time, things like this. Anyways, so that was like one big risk factor, and we were like, okay, let's deal with that. Okay, let's have all these 2.0 pieces live on consumer chains. Great. But obviously there's like things we haven't considered, right? So like I actually would be very curious from a risk perspective, especially like from like a software deployment perspective or Gaia development perspective. Like, what are these things that could severely compromise the hub? I'd actually like love to hear people's thoughts on that. And Jacob, like, especially on the 10% figure, like where does that where does that risk come?
I'll reply by voice real briefly, but I replied in a message too. Basically, the death scenarios for me, that 10%, are economic and social, and they're not technical. And I think ICS looks really good. And Park, I'll hand it off to you.
Right. So my issue here is that this is one of the largest blockchains by market cap in the entirety of the cosmos, in the entirety of the blockchain ecosystem. Like, everything that exists in crypto. This is an enormous economic change that you don't want the entire Cosmos ecosystem to look bad in the potential outcome that there is a huge fallout for the fact that it just borks the hub, right? And so that's where I have a high degree of hesitation, is that taking this as if it's a software development approach does not take into account the ancillary effects of how it is that there is dependency and there is a sense of community that exists within the cosmos that is affected by things like this. It is in effect an economy. So while there is potentially, these isolated risks, the isolated risk is not like the isolated risk here is not as though it doesn't have implications. And so that's where there should be a lot more consideration taken. This is a community project. Then it's a software project. It's a software project that is supported by community. And because it's a software project that is supported by a community, the development approach cannot be taken with the attitude of it being software that's just being developed. That's where my biggest hesitance is. We need a new there's a new paradigm that needs to be developed around how it is that these things are constructed. We cannot use previous versions of it, and because of that, coming to consensus, however long it takes, is obligatory. It's obligatory because if we're looking at this, there's an analogy I use a lot for the cosmos, which is just very fitting because it's actually the analogy that the cosmos has itself, right? The great value proposition of the cosmos is that it has this interconnected anti-fragile nature. You have the ability to have all these different chains that can interact with one another, but the degree of fragility that exists from how it is that these things are connected is not made fragile by that connection. A Terra went down. Did the entire cosmos ecosystem go down? No. Right? So keeping that in mind, analogizing the entire cosmos ecosystem as something that has this degree of anti-fragility built into it, it requires us to look at whether or not the approach we're taking to how it is that changes are happening on the hub and how it is that these changes are being implemented, if it's the correct approach, because it needs to be bespoke, it needs to be deliberate, and it needs to have careful consideration taken to its effects. So yeah, that would just be my point here. Is like, to your point of us trying to take a software development approach. This isn't software. This is community.
It sounds like you've been thinking a lot of many of the same issues that I have. Louis Daniela, Stav. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I believe that you should unmute and speak because you had your hand up. Stav Rossman.
I'd just like to point out, Jacob, your 10% figure or whatever figure on the risk scale would be complete desolation, but there's pretty much 100% chance of forking and community disruption just by passing this in its current form.
That's a fair observation, and I should say that. Okay, at one point I talked about like a mutual fork scenario with slashes. That was bad, and Greg from Regen came in and actually really corrected that and made it really great. And there's a post on the Cosmos Hub forum about that. I'm fine with a fork. And Louis, I'll pass off to you.
Hey everyone, Luis here. I'm a small-time validator, but I've been invested in the Cosmos for a while. And I just wanted to share that I think many of us agree that Cosmos can be improved, there's a way forward, and there's a lot of options on the ground. I just think that everyone has to, like Genoa mentioned, it's just a proposal that's not final, that's not any chain parameters changing. We're just saying can grow. This is our way forward. It's not the way, but it's our way that some are proposing. And I think everyone has to keep in mind that it will change. There's a lot of way to go. And this is just saying we can do better, basically. And I think we all have to keep in mind that this is not final, basically. And there's a lot of work to be done, for sure. But we as a community to choose if we want to change and improve or we want to stay static. And staying static in this ecosystem that we are all invested in, it's death as well. So yeah, there's a chance that a lot of stuff could go wrong, but staying static and not changing, that's certain death in this ecosystem. Just want to share that thought.
I really appreciate that. Do you happen to have a particular position? Are you a yes voter?
I'm a yes voter, but I understand the no with veto, and I get completely where they're coming from. But I think that even with the risks, we should move forward, basically.
Yeah, I want to address, I think it was mainly Park and maybe Jacob's things that you've raised in the past. But I think like a lot of the framing, or maybe a lot of like the hesitation around this proposal is, I think, a lot more to, and I could be wrong, so please, address if I'm wrong, but it's more to do with the symbolic sort of nature of this proposal rather than, I think, like very like clearly defined sort of criticisms or like, parts of the proposal that are like, let's say, like a non-starter, right? Because like, again, this is a work in progress and this is more of an offering than, and definitely not an execution plan, right? So if it's an offering and if it has, this vision behind it, I think it seems to me that the hesitation is a lot more like, okay, so symbolically this represents a shift in like how we think about the hub, right? How we think about growing the community, expanding the tent, getting more contributors, having some utility, having like, some services, some functional things that people like in the market actually care about. So energy security obviously being a clear example of things people actually want. Even though I think, months ago at the very beginning, Blue Kirby was trolling me specifically, being like, nobody wants this. This is ridiculous. But anyways, we proved them wrong. So I think like what it is like, it's the symbolic kind of nature of this proposal, which, I think is like kind of for the first time very clearly, maybe Prop 69 like tried to do this, but clearly, it didn't pass. It's showing the community like, okay, we can like do things, right? Like we can like build things that people care about, we can like have, new entrants, like we can like expand the tent, we can like provide like, functional things that people are going to use. So, and not to say that people that like are like hesitating to like vote yes on Prop 82 don't want that at all. Like that's not the conclusion. It's just, I think, like a pretty significant like symbolic kind of change in like how we kind of do things that I think is like, definitely, makes people like cautious, right? And it's like, okay, but what are all the pieces that we now have to think about, right? Like even like from like a validator perspective, like around interchain security, like there's, still questions like, okay, but like what are the fees? Like what are those going to look like? Like what's the governance process going to look like how is this going to increase like, like cost of operations, things like this. And it's like, these are all things like we will have to figure out like as a community. Like there is no like 1, 5, even 10 entities that can like figure this out. Like the whole point of Cosmos is the fact that like, to Park's point, there is like this anti-fragility, there's like decentralized nature of it, like there's tons and tons of contributors, like like the all of these things that we like that I don't have to preach to the choir here, but I think like to me, like just reflecting on this discussion, it feels like that's kind of like maybe where the hesitancy is. It kind of like and this is something I personally don't want. Like it feels like maybe people are like sidelined, like, oh my god, like what, like this is such a big change, right? Whereas like things like ICS have been like socialized over a period of many months, right? And even still isn't live, right? Like there's still many months to go, and it'll be a thing that we do for many years. So yeah, like so like I do get it. Like the symbolism of this proposal is like pretty significant, and like yeah, like we should be addressing that.
Hey folks.
Hi, Jack.
Yo,
Good to see Park here.
good to see you as well.
Syed, I believe. Syed, do you work for Informal? Is that the Informal, Syed? All kinds of folks coming on.
No, this is ICA, Interchain.
Interchain Foundation, Syed. Awesome. Yelena, great discussion. Yeah, I guess.
I'd love to hear from like someone that is like hesitant or like has voted no or like has like strong opposition, because I feel like that's the community I'm like most interested in.
Yeah, anyone who has concerns, happy to sort of talk through any of that. And I do firmly believe there is still room for a deal space between both of these parties, and I'm kind of actively pursuing that with every tool I have right now. So, I think what's important is the future of the Cosmos Hub and figuring out how to build value accrual for the hub and allowing it to kind of raise its own, control its own destiny. Stav.
Would that outreach include considering putting up a revised proposal?
Yeah. I think at this point I'm willing to kind of consider anything. I think that it's really important. Like, this plan that we have for Atom 2.0 requires a lot of other governance proposals. We need a durable majority of Atom token holders in order to make this politically viable. And if we don't have that, then every proposal is going to turn into a fight, and it's going to push folks away from contributing, and it's going to lead to a degradation of Atom governance in the long term. So, right now it seems like there's a strong 25% minority, roughly, who is ideologically opposed to what we're proposing here. And from what I'm hearing from Adriana and other folks on that side, it seems like there's a few small changes we could make and unify around this vision. And that's what I'm kind of driving towards. Park, did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. You just weren't here for me expressing my hesitance.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to reiterate that.
Yeah.
I'm actually really appreciative of you saying what you just said, which is you're very open to proposing differently here, because our specific hesitance over at Figment is in that we don't think that the community has had sufficient time to digest the scale of the changes that are in place and digest the effects of each piece of what this could be in the long run, and digest just what those pieces work like in the first place. And so because of the effects of it, that's where we're just kind of going we really wish that the work that's happening in these 10 days leading up to this proposal's ending. I don't know, maybe we all have ADHD and we only work under pressure or something like that. But it really feels like to me.
I think that is really the truth, because we've had members of Figment who are involved in the 2.0 discussions. Mm-hmm. We have had a large number of folks. That are. Sorry, let me just tell Jahan. We've had a large number of folks who've been right into these discussions for a really long time. And, I can speak for myself as well as a number of the other authors. We've done quite a bit, both prior to this becoming public as well as after this becoming public, to solicit broad-based community input.
Right.
And so, I think that our problem outreach started in June. Our problem as proposers is this is something that I feel like we're going to hear even if we wait another 2 months. And part of the Atom 2.0 vision is that we are at a crisis point with the hub where it is floating and there's no vision, and the core teams contributing to it don't know how to fix that without community input. So, I guess that's what I would say to that part.
Yeah, I think definitely outreach and communication over this has been okay. So I'll be explicit with how I have been sort of thinking about this a little bit. There is a systemic problem that exists in kind of all consensus-oriented systems. This is not exclusive to crypto. It just exists. It exists if you were in a protest march. It's the same thing, which is that you kind of sit in a situation which if someone takes a leadership position and is starting to drive forward with what it is that they think everyone should be doing, a lot of people can mute their own footwork and put themselves in a position in which they allow a sense of authority to those who are taking the steps forward on proposing things. So I think, to the effect that you've been soliciting feedback, I would ask you, and I'm just asking you directly, how much feedback have you actually gotten about it? Because I think up until probably pretty recently, and meaning during this proposal period, the sense I get from a lot of you who have been working on this is that you haven't been getting the feedback you expected. And so you're somewhat looking at pushback or hesitance over movement here as if it's surprising, as if there's been efforts made to solicit feedback. So I guess I would just ask you outright, you've solicited, have you gotten any?
A lot of the feedback that we got was not around the pieces that we've gotten feedback around. It was around design of things like the scheduler and the allocator. It was around, ensuring that we end up with either a fixed supply asset or a very low issuance asset. And I think that, you know, you've seen us tweak the proposal since we put it out at Cosmoverse. We've kind of been continually revising since we started this process. So, you know, what I would say is, yes, we have gotten a decent amount of feedback. I think the ferocity and scale of feedback around some of the proposed issuance changes did take us by surprise, A. And B, I think what was really disappointing is there are a number of folks who we did explicitly try to reach out to about this, who instead of talking to us directly have chosen to go public with their dissatisfaction. Mm-hmm. And then that makes it really hard to sort of figure out a way forward, because now we're in this proposal period and things become a lot more complicated.
Yeah. It's intriguing to me because now, of course, things are getting complicated because we're trying to come to consensus, and those who are disagreeing with you or hesitant towards the direction that are, and maybe even throwing accusations out there for whatever reason, which it seems like is what you're saying.
We've all been in flame wars before.
Right.
This is how this works. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, to that effect, obviously, I think we do all have the interest of seeing that the Cosmos Hub goes in a positive direction, and that the work that goes into it is meaningful and best serves the community. And I mean, like, I don't know how else to put it, but like, it sucks that you haven't gotten like all the feedback that you deserve on how it is you want this to look until now, right? Sometimes maybe that's what it takes, which is like the crappy part, I think is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to have to jump. I'm trying to do a lot of shuttle diplomacy today, so I'm going to be kind of dropping in and out of here. But Park, thank you very much for taking some time to chat with me. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I just want you guys, as well as everyone else on this call, to know that we work really hard to listen to the concerns of folks in the Atom community. And, like, that is something that is deep, we all care deeply about. And so if you ever have anything, chat with us. Anyway, talk soon. Catch you guys soon.
Thanks. I got to run as well, but it's a pleasure being here with all y'all. Sorry for
really good to meet you, and thanks for dropping in.
Yeah, sorry for monopolizing the airtime, but I'm sure this is a conversation.
Not at all. Like, so, you know, first time we've met, and I'm really happy that we did.
Take care, y'all.
Any other people in the meeting that have like oppositions or are hesitant, don't know where they stand?
I mean, yes, I want an independent Gaia, but you knew that. In fact, I've got to say, it is now 2:15 for me, and I'm gonna have to like click some Game of Stakes buttons here. So if everybody's cool, I'll like pass the torch. I love Jack's idea of doing this by video, and I would encourage somebody else to like set up a Google Meet. I tried to figure out if I could, hand off hostiness, but I did not use Notional's account, or I would be able to do that. So no superpowers on my Gmail account. And any final thoughts, or does anybody want to ask me anything? Because I do love yeah. Oh, what's up, Lorax? How are you?
Hello. I'm going to drop off. I just wanted to express thanks for actually setting up this this video call for everybody. I think that this is a great way for people to actually express thoughts to each other. And I would like to see more of these before the governance period is over, because just being able to hear, I'd never met Park before either, and understanding their hesitancy was really helpful. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks before I drop off. That's pretty well all I have to say.
All right. Well, cool. Everybody have a great day or night wherever you are. I'm probably gonna head to bed, and see you guys around. Bye.